Well, thank you, band, for that. Thanks. We got a great group tonight. Thanks, guys, for coming out. And as young as they look, they're not college students. So we appreciate you guys coming out and leading us in worship and being here tonight. So thanks, guys. And Mackenzie, our solo girl in there. So tonight, I'm excited to be back here in front of y'all. And we're kind of, again, taking off here on this blank space series. And before we get too far, I just want to make one last concerted push here for Converge, if you didn't hear it already. Heidi put it, but, God bless Heidi. She doesn't come off very intimidating. And so I promise you, from a person that I'm going to come at you a little bit stronger, if you don't go, I will come at, no. If you don't go, it's not that, it won't mean that you won't have a good trip or time wherever you end up being. The deal is, though, if you can do the math, there's about 45 booked already. There's about 50 people in this room. So you can imagine how you might feel when you come back. And it's not to be intentional. Nobody wants to make you feel left out or anything like that, because there are circumstances. But I have seen that slope, and people feel disconnected, and we try to accommodate for that. But there's just something you can't get back by not going. So I want to really encourage you to think about going. If money is the issue, coming from the guy who pays the bills here, I want you to come talk to me, because I don't want money to ever be an issue to not go. It's as simple as that. So come and talk to me when you decide that you're going to go, and I'll figure out how to get you there. So with that said, we're going to pick up again in this blank space, and we talked about the blank space mistakes for the last couple of weeks. And tonight, kind of if you could go at it thematically, tonight we're going to be talking about how to keep your blank space blank, basically. And you've seen the trajectory and the arc of where this thing is going. And we want you to not necessarily feel like you're a terrible person if you're in a relationship, but we want you to understand the value of being single, as oftentimes you feel ushered right out of this phase. You feel pushed to, whether it be from grandmas or from friends or from circumstances, to get married and have lots of babies and do all that so they can enjoy your life more than you enjoy it. So we're going to talk about that a little bit more, and we're going to also come at this a little bit different tonight. And there's a couple reasons for this. One of my big goals for you guys and girls, is that you walk away from your experience and your time here at U-Life and Community Church. And when you, and most of you will, not all of you, we love the ones who are able to stay and find jobs in the area and feel that connected to the community. They want to do that. But often, many of you will go. And we want you to feel that you had an experience here that when you leave, you can immediately plant into a church and grow in your faith. And not only grow in your faith, but lead in those respective places. But to do that, we have to do more than just give you a great community, or give you a great experience, or give you great programs. We actually have to give you a firm foundation in your faith. And so part of the way of doing that is through speaking. And one of the things that we can often get bent on, especially at this young anti-conformist age, is that we want the coolest, hippest teaching there is, otherwise it's terrible. Some of you guys may know some of these speakers, like Judah Smith. He's awesome. He's like, I don't even know. Some of you guys have seen him preach. If you haven't, go see. But he's like this total hipster-looking dude. He brings it. He walks around like a boss on the stage, and we love that, right? And the problem is when we think that's the only way to hear God's word taught, and we start boxing that form of teaching in. So one of my purpose is for you is to hear it a lot of different ways. So one, you can learn it a lot of different ways, but two, that you can not seclude yourself to certain ways of teaching. So long story short, the first week, well, you saw me on video the first week, but after that, the next week, you saw me in a very conversational, this is real, Mitch, I'm going to say what's on my mind. Last week, you saw Mackenzie, my wife, and she was doing a very multimedia approach with videos and a lot of connecting pieces. And this week, I'm going to go a little old school. You don't even see me with one of these usually. You usually see me with a device or something, scrolling, hitting things. But tonight, what I want you to do is walk with me through the chapter of 1 Corinthians 7. And again, I want you to do this so that you see, one, the Bible is accessible. And two, that you yourself can do exactly what I'm doing up here and walk through that without a lot of help. And I think that's one of the greatest misconceptions that we can make in our own mind, is that I don't know the Bible well enough, therefore I feel intimidated to read it, and I don't. And so you stay detached from the Word, and that's where Satan can do his work and get to you and derail your life, and we don't want that. So we're going to walk through this, and we're going to do it in a very old school kind of way. And actually the technical term for this, if you want to know, is expository preaching. So this is what you're hearing this evening. So we're going to pick right up and do that. And basically how it's going to look is I'm going to read right through here, and we'll take some breaks in between and talk about them. But the first thing, when I spoke 2 weeks ago, we talked about kind of these, the core of what these mistakes are. We broke it down into 3 categories. We said the wrong timing, the wrong person, the wrong approach. And when we talked about the wrong approach, I mentioned that scandalous topic of sexual immorality and how that can really derail our faith and even derail that relationship in a big way. And one of the verses I shared in that was 1 Corinthians 6:18. And it says, "Flee from sexual immorality. Every other sin a person commits is outside of the body, but the sexual immoral person sins against his own body. Or do you know that your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit within you, whom you have from God? You are not your own, for you were bought with a price. So glorify God in your body." This is the very end of chapter 6. Now we're going into chapter 7. And that's what we're going to read through today. So I want you to keep that in mind about kind of where he was and then where we're going. So let me start here. Chapter 7, verse 1, I'm going to read through verse 5. It's going to be up here, and Dave's going to follow along back there on the computer if you don't have a Bible. It says, "Now concerning the matters about which you wrote, it is good for a man not to have sexual relations with a woman. But because of the temptation to sexual immorality, each man should have his own wife and each woman her own husband. The husband should give to his wife her conjugal rights, and likewise the wife to her husband." This is good news for you married folk. "For the wife does not have authority over her own body, but the husband does. Likewise, the husband does not have authority over his own body, but the wife does. Do not deprive one another, except perhaps by agreement for a limited time, that you may devote yourself to prayer, but then come together again, so that Satan may not tempt you because of your lack of self-control." All right, so backing up here, he's coming off what he was just saying. All forms of sexual immorality is bad. But he wasn't talking about in every context. He was talking about in the context outside of marriage. And so he jumps right in to chapter 7 and says, "Now concerning the matters about which I wrote, it is good for a man to have sexual relations with women." He's saying it is good, but because of that sexual temptation, you just need to do it in the context of a marriage. It needs to be one wife or one husband for good. It's not like this crazy post-contemporary, open relationship stuff. They're saying one wife, one husband, and that's where sex is good. That's where it is. And then there's some guidelines in there of what sex in a marriage context looks like. And again, like I said, if you're married, this is good news. It's actually biblical that the wife shouldn't refrain from the men. Thank God. This is very important. But why I share that is not necessarily to give you any kind of knowledge that you need to know at the moment, probably for some of you, but to show you that matters like this are in the Bible, and that you can learn very practical, tips to what it looks like to follow Christ. And so this is something you may not need to know now. It's good knowledge, but it'll definitely be important when you're married, to the point to say, hey, if you both decide not to, it needs to be mutual. It can't be one way or another, or else that leads to very dark directions in a relationship. And so now picking up from there, We're going to go into verse 6, and I'm going to read a few verses here. It says, "Now as a concession, not a command," it's important, "I say this, I wish that all were as I myself am. But each has his own gift from God, one of one kind and one of another. To the unmarried and the widows I say that it is good for them to remain single as I am. But if they cannot exercise self-control, they should marry, for it is better to marry than to burn with passion." These are some of the more important verses we're going to hit on tonight. Basically, the theme of this is Paul saying, stay single. And Paul is actually, he says, it is good for to remain single as I am. There's a lot of debate out there. Many people believe that Paul was actually married at one time, that it's believed that he was a member of the Sanhedrin, but we don't actually know for sure. He was on track to be one. And if he was on the Sanhedrin, he would have had to have been married. But if he wasn't part of that, he might not have ever been married. Or it's also believed that perhaps he was married and then his wife, he was a widow or something of that nature. But we know at this point he is single, and he's seeing the value and he's expressing the value of being single here and saying to the unmarried and to the widows, do what I do, be single. And he goes into telling you why it's important to be single in a little bit. And this is the heart of this message tonight, is I want you to answer the question, why single? Why is it important for you to be single? Why is it important to be single for a phase or for a season or maybe forever in your life? Because God does call people sometimes to being single forever. But this is the other catch in the second half of this, is that he says, if you can't exercise self-control, get married. This is really interesting, because he's acceding that we're pretty weak, and that some people just don't have the discipline of like a Bo Arlt, of course, where you're just an Iron Man and can just say, I will do this or won't do this, and it's that way. Some of us are weak like this guy. And I know for me, when I met Mackenzie, from the moment, I technically had met her, but I'd never talked to her really before this. But from when I actually talked to her to the point we were married was less than a year. This verse was very important to me. It was not easy to stay sexually pure because I loved her, and because I got excited about her, and because I wanted to be with her. And so now to say we're going to get into other pieces of this, but there is that basic point that if this is a person that God would have for you, that a person that is following after God as well as you, it's better to get married than to continually down this road of sexual immorality, and that's what he's getting at here. And we're going to, again, these verses will keep kind of coming back to each other and complement each other. But again, he's talking to the widows too, so let me give you a little context in this. He's writing to the church of Corinth. That is the first letter to the Corinthians. And what happened is basically Paul had spent a lot of time in Corinth. And Paul had kind of developed this church there. And he left. And then he got news that kind of things were going crazy. And so he sent this letter back to say, hey, basically, you guys need to get back on track. Here's how to get on track. And the whole book of 1 Corinthians is to kind of exhort the leaders of the Corinthian church in steps to be more holy. And so when he's talking to the widows, there's a big debate, obviously breaking out about marriage going on there, and specifically those about widows. What do we do with widows? What can widows do or not do? And this town, this country, or rather, the city rather, was a pretty bustling city. It was very culturally diverse. It had a lot of different belief systems in it. There was a lot of different types of people represented. And mind you, Christianity is very new. And so they're the minority. And so a lot of these issues are coming as a direct result of the culture impacting the faith in negative ways. And Paul's coming back to say, hey, wait. These things that you're saying aren't exactly what Jesus told us before he left. This is how we're to live as Christians. And so that gives you a little context of what this book is all about. And so let's move on to verse 10. through 16. It says, "To the married I give this charge, not I but the Lord. The wife should not separate from her husband. But if she does, she should remain unmarried or else be reconciled to her husband. And the husband should not divorce his wife. To the rest I say, I not the Lord, that if any brother has a wife who is an unbeliever and she consents to live with him, he should not divorce her. If any woman has a husband who is an unbeliever and he consents to live with her, she should not divorce him. For the unbelieving husband is made holy because of his wife, and the unbelieving wife is made holy because of her husband. Otherwise your children would be unclean, but as it is they are holy. But if the unbelieving partner separates, let it be so. In such cases, the brother or sister is not enslaved. God has called you to peace. For how do you know, wife, whether you will save your husband? Or how do you know, husband, whether you will save your wife?" Now, there's a lot going on here. So I'm going to kind of recap before. But here's the deal. This kind of first section is, he's talking about the issue of divorce. And obviously this was an issue going on. Is divorce okay? If it is, what is kind of the right way to go about it? Again, remember, this is a relatively new faith in the community. So a lot of these people who became Christians, some did, but their spouse didn't. So what do you do in that situation? Should you divorce them? Should you stay with them? Should you threaten them? I don't know. What do you do here? So this is the issue at hand. But it's really important to understand this, because I think oftentimes, because we can look at this right now and say, well, I'm not married yet, so this really doesn't apply to me, other than maybe the issue of divorce a little bit, because unfortunately that is the reality of our culture, that this is fairly common. So we should know what God says or what God thinks about divorce. And that's a valid topic in its own right, because as I mentioned the last couple weeks, this is, in my opinion, the second most important decision you'll ever make, besides that of following Christ Jesus. And so he's letting you know, he's basically saying, don't get divorced. This ups the ante of that decision one more. If he, at his core, does not want us to get divorced, it makes that decision about who we're going to marry much more significant. Part of the problem in our culture, why there is so much divorce, and I'm not here to bash people who have went through divorces, and probably if I asked you to raise your hand, how many of you have been affected by divorces, probably more than half of you would raise your hand. But the reality is those of you who have been affected know it can be very damaging and difficult. And part of the reason it's so common, I think, in our culture is one of those things we talk about, people getting married without figuring all this stuff out ahead of time. And then two, people getting divorced oftentimes because it's just not that big of a deal to get divorced, right? It's like, we'll try it out. If it doesn't work, no big deal. Legally, it is no big deal. I mean, you split some property and that sort of thing. Emotionally, to your family, it's a very big deal. If you have kids, you should not get divorced. There are exceptions. They're not saying you are banished to hell if you get divorced. He's saying there are reasons that should justify a divorce, and here's how you deal with them. And one of those is just that your partner would leave you. You're trying as much as you can towards reconciliation, but your partner still chooses to leave. One of my friends who I shared with you is going through a divorce. His wife actually had an affair on him. He moved to try to reconcile despite her turning on him, despite her cheating on him, tried to reconcile, and she still would not have it. She was just done. She didn't want to reconcile. And in that case, it is biblical, because she was leaving, and there's not a lot you can do. You can't make somebody stay with you. So there are reasons. So that is something you should know about divorce going into marriage, the importance of it, and how high a value God puts on marriage. But the other side of this is we can look at this passage and say, well, it's saying if you're with an unbelieving person, then you should just stay with them. So, I know Mitch, you said you shouldn't date a non-Christian, but it kind of seems like it's okay here. And again, go to the context. These people were already married. This is not speaking to somebody who just happens to be in a relationship. Marriage is sacred. Marriage is something that God puts above dating in a big way. Literally, he says two become one. So he does not want to break that. Actually, what he desires is for that unbelieving side of the equation to come to a relationship with him through the life and testimony of that spouse. And I've seen that happen. It's pretty incredible. It takes incredible patience and usually a lot of putting up with frustrating situations. But that's what God wants. What this doesn't mean is, oh, I can go date somebody who's not, or it doesn't mean, well, I'm already dating somebody that's not when you're talking to me, so I'm good, right? That's not what that means. You are not married right now, at least some of you aren't. Most of you aren't. So that means the same applies as I said a couple weeks ago. You should not be with them. For all the reasons I've already said. If you want to see it, go watch the first or the second talk on the series, so I'm not going to waste time on that. But I want you to understand that and not get confused what's being said here. This is a very specific situation in which somebody comes to faith after they're married. And this happens often, still in our culture, still today. This happens often. And that to be something if that you just have to deal with. And again, it just points to the fact that the Bible does actually detail a lot of these common everyday situations and how to handle it. So, I'm going to move on to the next piece here. And it's verse 7, or chapter 7, 11. And I'm going to pick, 17 through 24. It says, "Only let each person lead the life that the Lord has assigned to him, and to which God has called him. This is my rule in all the churches. Was anyone at the time of his call already circumcised? Let him not seek to remove the marks of circumcision. Was anyone at the time of his call uncircumcised? Let him not seek circumcision. For neither circumcision counts for anything, nor uncircumcision, but keeping the commandments of God. Each one should remain in the condition in which was called. Were you a bondservant when called? Do not be concerned about it. But if you can gain your freedom, avail yourself of the opportunity. For he who is called in the Lord as a bondservant is a freedman of the Lord. Likewise, he who is free when called is a bondservant of Christ. You were bought with a price. Do not become bondservants of men. So brothers, in whatever condition each was called, there let him remain with God." It's really interesting here because it's basically saying that we tend to make decisions in our life and we can't use God as an escape button. You know, it's like being in a situation where it's like, well, I'm a Christian, a common one on campus, and I hope I don't offend anybody here, but God does something big in your life. He moves you towards Him, and you're part of maybe, the situation I'm thinking of is I had lots of friends who in college. They were part of the Greek system, okay? And they become Christian, they had this radical change in their life. And then they're like, well, this is an evil place. They do evil things. I should leave. I think what God's saying here is, stay where you were called. You were called to be a Christian. You were called to be a servant of mine. This is the situation you are in. Stick with it. And have an influence there. Be a light there. Be a testimony. He doesn't call us to go run into our safe communities of Christian bubble. In fact, at this time, there wasn't a very big safe bubble anywhere. He says to stay with it and do what God will do through your life in that situation. Now, I will give you some warnings on that. If you over and over and over again find yourself going down this road of sin because of the situation you're in, he doesn't say stay in sin. He talks about the situation. So if you use that same example about fraternity or sorority, he's not saying, okay, go ahead and keep doing what you're doing because that's why I called you to. He's saying, you stay a part of that organization, but be a light, be different. Get out of the sin and do what I've called you to do in this community. It's the same thing in a relationship. It would be really easy to maybe you're in an unhealthy relationship, it's not very good, but God's really doing something in your life and grabbing a hold of you. And you're saying, well, Mitch said, the Bible says I should just kind of stay where God's called me to. Well, if that relationship is leading you down a very negative and sinful road, No, he's saying get out of that sin. If the only way to get out of that sin, especially in something as unique as a relationship, is to get out of the relationship, then you need to. It would be really difficult to be in a relationship that was unhealthy, especially if that person wasn't a Christian and didn't have the same desire to please God, by just saying, no, we're not going to do that anymore, but I'll stay in the relationship. I'm telling you, the one person that didn't agree to that won't put up with that. And he'll try to, or she'll try to coax you into the same patterns you were in. So probably in that situation, you're almost going to have to walk away from the entire relationship. And in some cases, in that fraternity, sorority example, you might have to do the same as well if there's some kind of abuse or hazing or something that's happening because of your rejection of that sin. I understand that. But basically what this verse is saying is, God can work in you and through you where you're at, so don't just cop out saying, I'm a Christian, I can't be here anymore, and run. In fact, that's not what God came. You look at Jesus' life. He put himself in situations with sinners all the time. This is why the Pharisees came after him. This is why they tried to humiliate him and really cut his legs out from under him in terms of authority, is because he hung out with prostitutes and tax collectors. He didn't have sex, or he didn't, leverage money to take advantage of people like these tax collectors did, but he did spend time with them. He did love on them. He did care for them. And that's what he's calling you to do in these situations. I think that's what I'll just say about that one. So, jumping in here, 31, I'm going to go jump in a little bit further. 25, sorry. What's that?
Come on, Mitch.
Now concerning the betrothed. Betrothed is those committed to be married in this time. I have no command from the Lord, but I give my judgment as one who by the Lord's mercy is trustworthy. I think that in view of the present distress, it is good for a person to remain as he is. Are you bound to a wife? Do not seek to be free. Are you free from a wife? Do not seek a wife. But if you do marry, you have not sinned. That's important. He's not saying marriage is sinful. And if a betrothed woman marries, she has not sinned. Yet those who marry will have worldly troubles. And I would spare you that. This is what I mean, brothers. The appointed time has grown very short from now on. Let those who have wives live as though they had none, and those who mourn as though they were not mourning, and those who rejoice as those who were not rejoicing, those who buy as those that had no goods, and those who deal with the world as though they had no dealings with it. For the present form of this world is passing away. What is he saying here? This doesn't seem to make a lot of sense, right? Maybe you're tracking. But basically he's saying, life is short here. Wherever you're at, just stay in the position you're in. He's saying it's not God's command, but it's of his opinion, which is trustworthy, he says, that you should just stay where you're at. If you're not married yet, don't get married. If you're married, stay married. It's not bad to be married. And some of us, really most of us probably will get married, and that's okay. The second half of this piece, he's pointing out all of these kind of worldly things we focus our attention on. Oftentimes we get so fixated, whether it's on money, whether it's on, let's go look at through this, joy, the things that are causing you pain, going through all those pieces. We get so focused on them, we lose sight on what's most important to God, and that is the thing of the heavenly realms, right? This is what we do in relationships sometimes. It becomes our new idol. It feels really good to feel all warm and fuzzy inside and cuddle and play kissy face and schmoopsy poopsy and all that stuff. It feels really good inside. And so what happens is very healthy relationships can turn that into an idol. They can get so fixated on that, they lose sight of what the whole point is. And the whole point is to worship God, to focus on God, to devote our lives to God. Marriage is great when it helps us do that. Marriage is bad when it helps us focus just on each other. And so that's what he's getting at with all these examples. He's saying, here's a bunch of worldly things that we do that are wrong when the focus becomes on those worldly things. Just like marriage, just like relationships. We need to keep proper perspective on what we need to focus on, and that's God. And so that kind of takes us into this next piece, 32 through 35. He says, I want you to be free from anxieties, as if it was easy for him to say after he just told you to be single for the rest of your life. The unmarried man is anxious about the things of the Lord, how to please the Lord. But the married man is anxious about worldly things, how to please his wife. And his interests are divided. And the unmarried or betrothed woman is anxious about the things of the Lord, how to be holy in body and in spirit. But the married woman is anxious about worldly things, how to please her husband. I say this for your own benefit, not to lay any restraint upon you, but to promote good order and to secure your undivided devotion to the Lord. That's a very important last verse. This is probably the most practical piece of this for all of you. Why do you stay single? He's saying, if you're single, all you're worried about is how can I best please the Lord. That's it. That's what you're worried about. But when you're dating somebody, when you're married to somebody, it's how to please the Lord and how to please her or him. And he's not saying this is bad or sinful. He's just saying this is the reality. I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, have been in a relationship. So you understand this. You understand when you're with somebody, not only is there a desire to want to take care of them or want to please them, but there's a certain pressure that you must please them, right? Mackenzie's been gone for the last 3 days. She was very nervous, me caring for our kids. I don't know why. I'm pretty confident that I'm able to take care of children. But she was very nervous and all this and that. And so I didn't need to. It would have been good enough just for her to come home and they were both alive. That would have been good enough. But I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna one-up this. I'm gonna clean the house. I'm gonna make sure all the dishes are clean. I'm gonna do boatloads of laundry and fold it and put it away. And get some work done. That was my goal, and I did it. And she didn't notice, but that's okay. She'll notice eventually. I'm not bitter, but it just goes, it shows the point that it wasn't bad. My desires, my intentions, they were actually, I think, very holy and very commendable, if I'm not saying so myself. But my point is my focus has to be on that. It is going to be on that. If I wasn't married, if I didn't have kids, my day would not look anything like that. That's just the reality. And that's what Paul is trying to bring to light here. That is the reality. And so he's saying, hey, if you're married, you're going to be divided. It's as simple as that. But he says this at the end, verse 35. This is the absolute big verse. He says is I say this upon your own benefit, not to lay any restraint upon you. These are very important. He said this like 3 times now. This is not a command. This is my opinion. This is biblical. This is God's word, but you have to take it for what it is. It's God's word saying it's not a command, but it's a strong commendation to do this. But he says, promote good order and secure your undivided devotion to the Lord. This command goes for everybody. This doesn't mean like, okay, I chose marriage, I'm good. I don't have to have undivided devotion to the Lord. Even me as a married man, I have to figure out how to give my pure devotion to the Lord first. And it's out of that devotion that I'm even able to love my wife properly, to love my wife effectively. And so this is the key verse. This is also the why to being single. He's saying the whole point of this is so that you can secure your devotion to the Lord. This is why you should stay single, at least as long as it takes to figure out what that means or what that looks like in your life. So kind of moving in to the last piece here is, I'm just going to read one verse here, kind of jump us ahead. If anyone thinks that he's not behaving properly towards his betrothed, his passions are strong. Notice it says his passions are strong, and it has to be, let him do as he wishes, let them marry. It is no sin. Again, just reminding you, this is going to be easy. I counsel soon-to-be married and married people all the time. And it's probably the most dreadful advice, or not advice, rather news that they hear. They come, and I really appreciate when they do. It's very honorable. As a couple, they'll come to me and Mackenzie and say, you know, we are really struggling. We want this relationship to be healthy. We want this relationship to be focused on God. We know God doesn't want this relationship to be sexually immoral. Like, we need help. We need accountability. We need some advice, some tips, whatever. And they're moving towards marriage typically. And so, you know, we work through some of that stuff. But unfortunately, the worst news that I have to give them is, you wait till you get engaged. It's going to feel 100 times worse. That's the truth. That's the truth. If you've ever been married and engaged, you understand that. This is why I'll always recommend date longer, engage shorter. Because you turn the heat of engagement on, especially as a couple devoted to the Lord, you're probably devoted to each other. It's like in your mind, you're like, well, we're pretty much married. And it takes that temptation to a whole nother level, and you're not. That's the reality, you're not. So that's the reality. Is what I try to let them know is your desires, in their own right, with this person you love and plan on committing your whole life to, and I look at them and say, there's a great couple, not perfect, but they're, as individuals, a great couple and great individuals. Their love isn't wrong or sinful. Actually, the feelings they feel that are moving them towards that sexual immorality is actually a God-given feeling. The error in this is their context, the acting in this situation where they're not married. And so it's very important. This is probably why way back when they didn't even touch each other until they were actually married, because you all touch your hand, then you want to touch your leg, and then, it just goes on from there. This is the reality. And so it's really, really important that you understand your passions will grow, and they're not always sinful in their roots. Oftentimes, the root of that passion is pure love, pure God-given love for that person. It just can be exhibited in the wrong ways, in a not-so-loving way, as to maybe compromise the relationship. So, again, he's reminding, if it's too strong, just hurry up, get married, it's not a sin. But, again, be smart. Don't just, hey, she's really good looking, I'm feeling like we should just get married. No. Actually go through all those other steps we've talked about, making sure, this is a good person and compatible and has all the right same value systems and all that. But moving into the next verse there, verse 37, it says, but whoever is firmly established in his heart, being under no necessity, but having his desire under control, and has determined this in his heart to keep her as his betrothed, he will do well. This verse tells you not only it supposes the why of that devotion to the Lord, but this verse alludes to when you know you're ready for marriage. And it's not just when your passions take over. He's saying that's okay if that's where you get, but verse 37 says, but whoever is firmly established in his heart, being under no necessity, but having his desires under control, and has determined this in his heart to keep her as his betrothed, he will do well. This points to the fact that there's a sense of calmness, of self-control, of clarity of thought, of, hey, this isn't something rash, this is something I've thought about, this is something I've prayed about, I'm firmly established, it says in his heart, but I believe in his faith, in her faith. Then at that point, move forward. Then you can move forward into marriage, and that would be beneficial. That would be a good thing. Verse 38 through 40 says, so then he who marries his, I already read that. So verse 39, a wife is bound to her husband as long as he lives. But if her husband dies, she is free to be married to whom she wishes, only in the Lord. Yet in my judgment, she's happier if she remains as she is, and I think that I too have the Spirit of God. It's really interesting, that's where he ends it. He's saying, again, the issue of somebody who's widow, and he ends it with that final remark. She can get married, but in my opinion, she should stay single. That's where he's leaving it. He's saying, This is what he's found, and this is why I think a lot of people also believe that he was married and why he, was maybe widowed, is because he can experience both sides of it. I'm sure, as anybody and any widow does, love their spouse, but sees the value in that singlehood and can speak to both sides. And so for us, that's kind of what I want you guys to get out of this. Basically, it's answering this big question of why be single from the Bible. It's because God wants you to secure your devotion to Him right now. This is the best time to do that. It really is. You will not easily figure out your own faith and your own identity in the Lord when you're trying to figure out how to please other people, to be really honest. It just is very difficult, very unrealistic. So I don't want this to be kind of a shot at you if you're currently dating in that situation. But I do want you to think about, where am I at in this process? Ask those questions again. Am I with the right person? Is this the right timing? Am I doing this the right way? And if you're struggling with the answer to that, then you have to start asking, maybe I do need to take a season to be single. It doesn't mean that your relationship with that person is forever doomed. I've seen plenty of people do this very well, where they break up, they figure themselves out as individuals, and a year or two, sometimes longer later, they come back together and actually have a very healthy marriage and healthy faith. And so this is what will last you past college. And this is what I was getting in the beginning. It's not enough for me just to help you guys experience a great, loving community, although that's a high priority and goal for me here. Because if you don't experience it now, then you might never experience it to go looking for it or create it yourself. But the problem is, if you leave here and community is all you ever took away from it, then you'll just go find community somewhere else. You won't find God in your relationship with God. You won't find spiritual truth. You'll just go find good friends. And you can find good friends in a bar. Not to say bar is a terrible place. I quite prefer a bar once in a while. But I'm saying it's probably what I want you guys to get out of this is that your faith has to be rock solid as an individual. When things go wrong, when your relationship starts breaking down, you need God to keep you on path. This is what I've been through talking to so many guys, whether through divorces or just through serious breakups, where they've been together a long time. The difference in the person that gets out of that healthy and the person that doesn't is the one that has a strong, not only relationship with God, but then a strong network of friends around them that have a strong relationship with God. That's what you got to have. That's what you got to look for. That's why it's so important for you to be single right now. And if you are dating somebody, to find that place where you can experience God on your own. To find that place where you can experience God through really deep, close friendships on your own. I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again because I think it's important. My two best friends from college happened, I believe, because we were just so dead set on not having serious girlfriends through college. And so we did crazy things like live in Virginia Beach for a summer and live in Turkey for a summer and drive around the U.S. for an entire month almost. But those kind of relationships not only solidified our friendships, but they solidified our faith as individuals, where we could really connect with God and know that when stuff hits the fan, we're going to be okay. That's what this is all about. That's what I want for you guys. And so, my hope for you guys would be this, twofold, is that one, at a very base level, even by doing something like this, being able to read through a book and being able to read through chapters, seeing what you yourself can get out of it, is that you would do it. And that you would feel more comfortable doing it and find that there's application in your life now and there will be in the future. But my other thing would be that you really take stock of where you're at in your relationship with God and ask yourself, am I in a good season to be dating? And if you're not, do something about it. And if you are dating somebody and it seems crazy, like I'm not going to break up with them, figure out how you can do something to help your relationship grow with God independent of that person and not find your identity in that person. Maybe go on a road trip. I keep trying to push people to go on a road trip. Don't you guys go on road trips anymore? I mean, not Converge, that's a sweet road trip. But I mean, just on your own, go get in a car and go drive to Albuquerque or somewhere interesting. But I'm serious, like that's the kind of stuff I would love to see you guys do as you just kind of
pay for my gas.
Figure that out. Whatever, big truck man. All right. Well, I'm going to shift gears here, but before I do, let me pray. God, thank you for just this opportunity together. I thank you for your word. I thank you for the incredible detail. And that oftentimes we steer away just thinking, what in the world could be in here for me in this day and age? Like, it seems so out of touch, seems so non-applicable to my life, God. Well, thank you for it being so detailed and so specific and so relevant even today in our lives. God, I pray that you would give us the courage and give us the confidence to go look into your word and to figure out what it means to live holy. And God, I just pray for everybody here, no matter what their situation, whether single or dating or engaged or married, God, that you would just encourage everyone, each one of us, to really solidify that undivided devotion, to establish in our hearts that firm foundation of faith in you, God. We know that it's only you that can hold us together, and that's all we can really depend on in this world. So God, I just pray that we put that first in the season of life now, and help us figure out how to do that. So God, again, I thank you for the men and women here and their desire to put you at the center of their life. And pray that you bless them in this journey, God. In Jesus' name, amen. Come up here and sit. And in my mind, the stage seemed bigger.
No.
So I'm not exactly sure how it's going to lay out. We might have to just spread some chairs like along the wings and kind of face this way, guys. So if you're a small group leader, come up now. Sit next to your co-leader just so they can kind of connect you easier. Bo, if you could help like spin them around there. And so kind of my hope for this while they're moving is some of you may have been in a small group here, some of you may not. It can be very intimidating to jump into a small group, especially if you have that perception that everybody knows each other. Or if you see yourself as more of an introvert and don't really want to open up, or by the time you think about the words that you want to say, they've already moved to the next question. We understand that. And so what we're going to do at this moment is give you an opportunity to meet the small group leaders, but also we're going to give an opportunity to make them, nervous and, ask them the tough questions that they're always asking you, and so that they have to answer them on the spot. And so they literally have only had about, 5 hours notice on these questions, so we'll see what they got from them. But that's my hope right now. And so that's kind of my twofold goals in this, is that one, you can kind of see, it's not exact, but at least an idea of what the small group looks like if you haven't been in one of ours, what kind of questions we typically ask. And the other side of this is to get to know them. And so observe them, grade them, whatever you need to do to see who's the most funny or the most spiritual, and that's how you make your selection, it's not that simple, but do that. So I feel as awkward as you guys. I'm up here at the top looking. So let me do this. I didn't plan that far ahead. Welcome to a life of Mitch. So I'm going to just sit here out of the way and grab a mic. Is this one on? Somebody back there?
No, there's nobody back there.
Got this.
Tyler's not back there.
All right, it's HH7. Test. Keep going. It's HH7. It should be on wireless.
I think it's tested.
Just hit the top mute button. Tap it.
There's nothing picking up. Oh, there it
No, that's Did you mute this?
On the way back.
No.
It was when we were at Chick-fil-A.
Alright.
Right after I did my
You guys hang out down here. Test. There it is. Alright, and I'll keep one down here. And you guys be judicious with it, and I'll just be loud. Alright, so small group leaders. First, we're going to introduce you kind of informally. There's going to be some stuff rolling just casually up there. But I want you guys, and maybe it'd be simpler to just kind of go down the line for these questions. but kind of tell me who you are, tell us who you are, what you're studying, what year you are, how long you've been at community church or U-Life, and any other basic info that you seem pertinent.
I'm Dustin Bates, and I am an accounting major. I am a senior this year, credit-wise. I'll graduate next year, and I have been at U-Life for 3 years, I think, and I was at community church for 2 years, and I'm wearing a pineapple shirt.
Alright, I'm Tyler Sugden. I'm a mechanical engineering technology major. I'm in my 4th year, but I have a 5th year as well. And I've been with U-Life/Community Church for 2 years? 1.5, 2 years, somewhere in there.
I'm David. I am currently a marketing major. Woo woo. I have been here as long as Tyler has. We started last year in August, and so I've been in community church since then and been in U-Life since then. It feels like I've been here a lot longer, but it's only been like a year and a half.
I'm Sarah, and I am majoring in psychology. And I have been coming to U-Life, I'm a sophomore, I've been coming for 2 years now, and I've actually grew up in this church, so, because I live in Mount Pleasant, so I've been here for a while.
Yeah, Tommy.
I'm Carolyn. I am a communication disorder major. I'm a junior, and this is my 2nd semester at U-Life.
I'm Jenna. I am a biology major, and I'm a freshman. It's my 1st year here at Community Church and my first time in U-Life, and I'm originally from 6 hours away, so.
That's a cool city.
I'm from basically Canada in the UP. Well, I guess there's
my name is Kenzie, not his Kenzie, another one. And I am a senior at Central studying elementary education, and I will graduate next year. And what was the other question? Oh, I started coming at the beginning of last year.
Hi, I'm Kaylee, and I'm a junior studying marketing at CMU, and I came here last fall, so at a year and a half, almost 2 years. So.
Hi, I'm Bree. I'm a freshman also, and I'm majoring in neuroscience, and I started coming here just last semester.
All right, so kind of the next question is, and again, for all you guys to know, we kind of do this in groups. Just one of our primary goals is to get to know each other. Small groups aren't any good if they're just Tuesday night, so we want to get to know each other, find those common bonds, and be able to become closer friends. But in the spirit of that, what's your favorite thing to do by yourself? And also, what's your favorite thing to do with like a close friend?
Me first?
Wherever. You guys can hand them around. Just raise your hand if you want to.
I'll go first. I really love snowboarding, and I love playing racquetball, and I love eating, so those are 3, and ping pong's good too, so I love doing those things.
Like video games.
I do those things with my
He
friends
doesn't do
too.
anything by himself.
Your combos.
I can snowboard alone. I can't really play racquetball. I can eat alone. I love eating.
T-Bell.
And Taco Bell is great.
Shameless plug. Okay. What I love to do by myself is just be by myself. I really like being by myself sometimes. I also like to do like photography by myself because I'm just weird and I like my own time. Don't you laugh at me, but we're good. And then with my friends, I like to do stupid things.
Yeah, we do.
And stupid things can include a lot of things. Some may be illegal, but I don't know. So if you're a cop, they're not illegal. But by illegal, I mean like climbing down rooftops and stuff, not like just like so, yeah.
Okay. By myself, I really like to run, so that's probably my favorite thing to do by myself. And my favorite thing to do with my friends is go snowboarding with my best friend. And I also like to run and eat with my friends also.
Woo, eating
I
Taco
like
Bell.
Taco Bell.
Yeah.
But do you have a Dustin obsession with talking about? Because that's the key.
Nobody does.
Okay, by myself, I like to read or do crafts or binge on Netflix. With friends, I like to binge on Netflix or go hang out, watch movies, do random adventures, and just like go do something spontaneous or doesn't have to be planned.
By myself, I picture myself in a blanket with a cup of coffee or tea and a book or watching Netflix. And then I also like running, but me and my best friend, we always like to try to find recipes we haven't made before and make them. And sometimes they turn out really great and sometimes they don't, so that's always fun. And we just really like music and singing and that kind of stuff.
When I'm alone, I'm sad. Most of the time, I'd rather not spend my time alone. I'd rather be with a lot of people, kind of like Dustin.
Yeah.
So next year, when we're both together, we'll never be sad. But when I am by myself, I'm either listening to music or watching sports. Once April hits, I'll be watching baseball a lot, and anything that has to do with baseball a lot, like MLB Network a lot. So music and baseball are my big things, or Netflix, because Netflix is God's gift to us, our students. When I'm with friends, I like to play poker. Like we have poker nights every once in a while. Those are outrageously fun. I like to do some kind of adventures. Our shooting days are also a blast. I like just having a lot of fun with people. If I'm around somebody, I'm usually really happy. And so anything that I can do with a bunch of people is gonna be great for me.
Okay. Oh, I don't know. Okay, when I'm by myself at school, I like to read or watch Netflix a lot. Or, I don't know, just take lots of naps. I really enjoy naps. When I'm at home, I like to squish my dog a lot because he's my favorite. And then when I'm with my friends, I like to eat lots of food and Netflix. And I don't know, just kind of like sit around and enjoy each other's company while eating and watching Netflix.
I mean by squishing your dog.
Like-
How much squishing is
Like he's little, so I pick him up in bed with me and I just like hug him and squish him. And then when he gets mad at me, he kind of like snarls and then I let him go. But if he just lets me do it, then I'll just squish him for an hour and just cuddle with him. Sorry.
Okay, well, I also love running, and someday I want to run a marathon. But, so I like running, and I also love painting, so that's one thing that really I love to do by myself. And with people, I like doing all the girly stuff, like shopping and painting nails and watching Netflix. That's not really girly, but doing all that fun stuff, and yeah, just hanging out and talking. And random adventures, that's good.
By myself, I also like reading and Netflix, so it's the joy of going last, I guess. But with friends, I also like doing all the girly stuff and talking and shopping and stuff, but also, someone say yeah.
Bo's got a
revolves around food. So like eating up for lunch or making food or anything, it doesn't have to just make food. It's Pinteresting. Yeah, it's just anything with food. Yeah.
And anyone up here that also did not mention naps is a liar. Because you loved it.
I do love to nap. I love napping.
All right, so third question. Now I'm gonna turn up the heat on the questions a little bit. So this one is probably gonna make them all nervous. But in the spirit of what we're talking about, because this is what small groups are. Our small groups are about making what we talk about real life, because otherwise it doesn't do any good if it just stays up in your head. So this isn't, actually I jumped the gun a little bit. That's the fourth question. This question is not so much, other than it might be a little bit put them on the spot. But I want to know, just for the sake of, so people can hear the range given our subject, and that is to put a sign in your back as like advertisement. But what is your relationship status right now?
I'm single as a Pringle.
But nobody ever eats just one Pringle.
Which is why I'm delicious.
Yeah, that worked.
I'm dating this guy right here.
I'm single. I'm in a relationship. I'm in a relationship. I am also in a relationship. I am dating someone too.
I am currently single.
I am engaged to this.
What?
I am single.
All right, good time. Okay, so this is the heat up question here. Definitely more serious. But what has been one of the biggest and most challenging steps that you've taken in your life to ensure your blank space stay blank, in order to allow time and space to firmly root your devotion to God? So it's a big question. What's a big step you've taken to make sure your relationship with God is first over other kinds of romantic relationships?
For me, something really important was to make a lot of guy time, and that moves your focus, makes it easier to not concentrate on wanting a relationship or anything like that, and being content with where you are, and also making sure to find my validation in God and not not in a relationship. So those have been really important things for me.
I had to make some big decisions that weren't ones that I really wanted to make, and to take time for myself, because I realized I didn't know who I am as a person and who I was in God, and not fully knowing how to do that, and so taking time to just grow as a person and know who I am, find myself again, and do that through also building friendships with having girlfriends, and because I realized that wasn't as much of a thing. And so and just trying to listen more for God in my life, because I realized that wasn't something I particularly was doing, and that it was necessary, and like I said, not something I wanted to do. And so yeah.